There is video of this conversation between myself and Sarah Haider of Ex-Muslims of North America. If you'd like to watch the YouTube version, the link is in the description box of this show.
Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth, not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast, hosted by Seth Andrews.
I'm going to Denver, Colorado. The Colorado Secular Conference is coming up the weekend of July 27th. Next month is Lincoln, Nebraska. We've got Orlando coming up for the Florida Free Thought event, first weekend in November. I'm going to join Matt Dillahunty for an event in Phoenix the weekend of November 9th. If you need times, dates, locations, all those details are at my website, sethandrews.net/events. Sarah Haider is co-founder of Ex-Muslims of North America. She is an ex-Muslim herself. She is one of those people who I really do admire and respect out there in the arena of ideas. She just seems to be on the right side of this stuff so often and somehow manages to keep her cool. I don't know how this is possible, because all of these conversations are almost always so heated and insane. How do you keep your cool? Actually, you know what, Sarah? The other day I saw you almost lose your cool.
Yeah.
And I was a witness.
Yeah, I was
talk
embarrassed.
about that? I mean, you got hot under the collar about something. What happened?
I mean, it was, we were, Ex-Muslims in North America was this past weekend. We were at the New York Pride. It was part of this weekend. We have this gathering of ex-Muslims once every year. We've had it for several years now. We call it GafferCon. And it's a very private thing. And this is the first time we were even publicly telling anyone that we were having this, because it's just unique. It's exclusive to members of the organization. It's just a chance for ex-Muslims to comfortably, find support, meet each other. There's a lot of people only know each other from online, across the country. So this is a chance for everyone to come together. And we have all sorts of social gatherings throughout the weekend. Sometimes they last longer than that. I think this time we had like 6, 7 events throughout the weekend. So it's packed for everyone to just really just build a community and a home and a family where they don't have it anywhere else. And this year we also went to Pride, which was really exciting. And so we were just tweeting about that, sharing on Twitter, and I got several responses, the kind that I would expect, right? People saying, "Oh, why are you doing this? Why do you even feel the need to have this organization?" And this is the kind of response we get all the time. It's usually comes from a place of ignorance. It's people who don't know the extreme stigma that ex-Muslims live in. They don't know about the rights of ex-Muslims abroad and how we're not considered human like everyone else. There's a death penalty for being an apostate in a dozen countries, and then many more. Blasphemy is criminalized in many ways. So we're second, third, fourth, fifth class citizens. I mean, we're not even, we don't have any real rights in those countries. And that comes across here as well. In the West, a lot of these immigrant communities, they move here, but that stigma of apostasy stays, and ex-Muslims go through all kinds of persecution, abuse, all sorts of things. So it's shocking to me that anyone would find that, be surprised that our organization exists, and be surprised that we're finally fighting back against the ideology that persecutes us. So I almost lost it. I did I got really mad, which was not really what I do most of the time, or at least I try. I try not to.
You're human. It was good to see a chink in the armor, Because usually you're pretty cool customers. So
yeah. Well, I was sleep deprived, getting exhausted from the weekend, but I knew just very, very recently, because it just happened, but how important this was to people and how much it meant to them that we were there, and so it was just this all this coming together, and
it's interesting.
I didn't respond.
Oh, forgive me for walking on you there, Sarah. It's interesting you said that how I can't believe people are surprised an organization like ours exists, which is an interesting way to say it. I was reading an article that I think that you guys had posted on Twitter about the rise of the atheist in Lebanon, I think, of all places. And
all over the Muslim world.
You see an underground of which is now starting to emerge. I know that every nation, every Islamic theocracy is different, but they're making videos about their journeys and they're being published online. Holy cow.
Yeah, something is changing, and it's been changing in the past couple of years. And ex-Muslims in North America, we have the privilege, but I think also the responsibility of being in a country where we're relatively safe compared to anywhere else, really. And we have freedom of speech to a degree that even other Western countries don't have. So we have these freedoms, and I think we have this responsibility. We've been able to be public and open for many years, and build an organization and build capacity to support some of these other groups. And now we're seeing groups all over the world start up, individual activists who are just doing it on their own. But the idea of being an atheist in the Muslim world is just it's no longer what it was. Before, it was just extreme phenomena. Nobody understood it. Nobody knew anything about it. But now it's so much more likely that an ex-Muslim, or you've heard of them and you understand this phenomena in a different way. So it's kind of like we borrow a lot of language from the gay rights movement because we think it's very applicable to us. But we are coming out of the closet, and I think just by knowing other ex-Muslims and being exposed to other ex-Muslims, different people they're just standing up. They're finding the strength to stand up and to speak. So now in Muslim countries, I'm shocked all the time. These people are so incredibly brave. I get scared in the United States sometimes when we have events and we have to have all the security and make sure that nothing happens, because it could happen even here. And then to see that there are people in Egypt, in Pakistan, all over the Muslim world, where mob violence is truly, it's not a risk the way it is for us. It's almost an inevitability if you're open enough, and you're exposed enough. So it's amazing to me to see that this is happening and this change is taking place in front of our eyes, really.
So you talk a little bit about the mob. I'm going to make probably an awkward segue into discourse here in almost the year 2020. We're seeing a lot of the mob mentality. A lot of it originates online. The way people tend to sort of cordon off in their tribes and hurl invective at each other. And they really exist in a binary model, us versus them, in group, out group. You are either righteous or unrighteous. We're seeing this in factions of the atheist movement. We're seeing it in almost any place where you see diverse people come together. Have you, in your own circle, come to a point where you'd like to comment on that? I mean, you're involved in these sort of thick conversations, the death of, or at least the potential death of discourse in the age of the internet.
Right. I've been so concerned about this for several years. This is a way in which I'm losing hope, right? So there's the rise of ex-Muslims and atheists from the Muslim world who are standing up and being courageous. That is something that makes me feel so hopeful about the future of mankind. And then I'm seeing, the inverse to some degree happen, but also just a general collapse of civil discourse in Western society, but particularly among relatively educated people, the kinds of people who go online, the kinds of people who read, the kinds of people who are active and activists themselves. And I'm seeing a rising degree of intolerance for different opinions. I mean, it's very understandable given given the effects of the internet, and I'm not the best first person to talk about this, but I'm sure you know, Steph, just the anonymizing factor that you're just talking to a screen and you're talking to, you know, a username, you're not talking to a person. It makes it so much easier to be cruel. But beyond that, there is this insidious effect that I think Twitter allows and Facebook allows. It allows us to monitor our social environment. And humans we're always monitoring our social environment in order to see, okay, well, can I get away with saying this? Can I not get away with saying this? We always are running that calculus in our head and judging to see if the waters are cool enough to be open about something. But the internet is doing something where it's allowing that monitoring to happen at a more rapid rate and on a mass level. You can see what your whole community, what your whole circle is thinking and what's okay to say and what it isn't okay to say. And what that does is increase self-censorship. Because it allows, you know what is okay to say, what isn't okay to say. So the average person is self-censoring in a way that they weren't self-censoring before because they couldn't. They just didn't know what the other person was thinking. They had no idea. Now they know. And now they see witches, so-called, like people who have transgressed, who have walked out of whatever invisible line that now exists. They see those people punished. We see them. We all see them. Because of the hyper connectedness of our social circles. So this has, all these little things come together to create an environment where we treat each other like crap. We treat each other as if we're not human. We're proto-fascists, all of us. And it's one of those things that I think, it demoralizes me and it makes me feel like, oh my goodness, how are we going to have any conversation if the person sitting next to you is always an enemy, especially if they disagree with you, then they're definitely an enemy. Then what's the point of civil discourse anyway? What's the point of having conversations? What's the point of persuading people? What's the point of rational argumentation if the person that you're trying to reach, you already consider them an enemy?
Talked about persuading people. One of the arguments that I hear is that you can't reason with unreasonable people. Of course, you're talking to someone who is reasoned out of an unreasonable faith. A lot of us were reasoned out of an unreasonable position. I'm a fan of Dia Khan. Are you familiar with Dia Khan's documentary, White Right? I would love the chance to talk to her about sitting down in a living room with white supremacists face to face, right? Because they're ready for the confrontation in the public square where everybody's shouting and throwing things. They're ready for that. But when you see a person sit 4 feet from another human being and say, do you think I'm not a real person? Do you think I deserve to be deported? And to watch many of these people in their hearts begin to just, tilt. One guy had to stop the interview and just like, I just can't talk. He just went tilt. He just couldn't deal with it. But if you talk about having conversations, even with the worst among us, meaning those who hold the worst ideas, this is unthinkable. You cannot reason with, I don't know, Nazis or whoever. What's your take, Sarah Haider? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising to me to see. I mean, I don't know how surprising it is for you, but it's surprising for me to see this attitude come in from secular people, from the atheist community, from the skeptic community, because as you said, so many of us were reasoned out of unreasonable ideas, and some of us were extremists. I mean, I regularly interact with ex-Muslims, sometimes prominent ex-Muslims, sometimes ex-Muslims who really now they're activists and they're changing the world, who used to be insane, conservative, I want the caliphate to come back kind of people. And they were reasoned out of it. And given that we in the atheist community, especially, we know these people, we know formerly fundamentalist people, and we've seen how radically just persuasion, can change someone's mind. Why would we doubt this in the case of political differences, in the case of extremists like the far right or even the far left?
Can we park there for just a second? I want to. You have dealt with people who were capable of murderous violence in the name of their faith. right? I mean, when you say extremist, we're not just being hyperbolic. You've encountered people who epitomize what ISIS epitomizes at one time in their lives. Is that what you're saying?
Or supported what ISIS was doing. I mean, there are people, ex-Muslims who are like that and who admit to being like that, who are now ex-Muslims themselves, and they openly talk about how a couple of years ago, before they left the faith, they would have advocated for the death penalty for people like us and the kind of person they are now. I mean, that kind of radical change can happen, and I don't understand. I mean, what's confusing to me is to see that kind of tendency that you just mentioned of not understanding that people, of course, even the most fundamentalists, some of the most out there, some of the most extreme, violent people can be convinced, can be spoken to, can be persuaded into changing their minds. I don't understand why this is considered like my position is considered naive when we have proof. We know it's happened. It happens all the time. Atheists especially know that it happens.
You know what? Only a proto-fascist would say that. You know what I'm saying? Sorry, I've been reading the comments too long. It was just a reflex. It just flies out of my mouth. You took some heat after sort of I don't know if it was a condemnation, certainly a criticism of the West in regard to compulsory hijab. This was an article that had been published, I don't know, a month, probably a month and a half or so ago. And you were pretty hard on Western progressives in regard to the hijab. And so I'll just let you sort of take that wherever you want. The point of the article and your response to the criticisms, or in fact, what were the criticisms? Okay.
Well, I think that you're talking about an interview that happened. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah. Lots of things were covered, and hijab was one of them. And before I go on at length about how I feel about the hijab, let me just say I understand that sometimes things are difficult and complicated, and the average person won't necessarily know what the best tactic is to take. And I see that as being my role as an activist, to come and to speak to people and to show them why, maybe their approach to to this particular aspect is not okay, or is problematic, or is something that will lead to some harmful effect in the future. So I see that as being my role, and I understand that. I understand that as being part of the process. However, it is frustrating to get the kinds of pushback that I'm getting sometimes when I discuss the hijab. I understand that there are some women who wear it out of choice. I put on the hijab myself when I was in middle school. I was quite young, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I wasn't forced. Nobody in my family were like my mom. By that, I mean, my mom didn't wear the hijab, and she never pushed me into wearing it or anything like that. But I put it on, not for very, very long, but I did put it on, and I wore it, on my own, but by choice, whatever choice means in this context. And I felt empowered by it. And I felt like, given my faith, given what I believe, this was the right thing to do. That's what I thought. So the choice discussion is, let's set that aside for just a little bit. Regardless of whether or not something is a choice, a woman can choose to advocate on behalf of something that ends up being quite sexist, or even misogynist. And, that I think it has to be separated from the choice discussion, because that is more complicated and less complicated depending on what you're talking about. In the case of what the hijab means, it matters that the religion considers it as part of a set of compulsory dress codes on women and on men. And, that aspect of the dress code is very gendered, and it's gendered for a reason. There's a certain consideration what the female body is and how it leads to sin and what it can do to destroy, the morality of a people. So this has to be a part of the discussion. We can't just say that, none of this matters. This entire historical context of what the hijab has been been and still is in the majority of the world. It's just not relevant because, you know, some privileged women in the West, some privileged Muslim women choose to wear it, right? So they choose to wear it, and that's the end of it. But of course, that's not the end of it. We know that there are so many countries and around the world where women are forced. There are many, many communities where even if they're not forced, you know, by the law, they're strongly encouraged, you know, forced, in other words, by religious communities to cover, and they start covering when they're 8, they're, you know, 7 sometimes, very, very young. And they're not really given any choice to be any other way by their parents. And we know that this exists. And that context matters. And that's important to talk about. And it's to the extent that I see it when we're talking about the first hijabi to do X, you know, there'll be news articles about celebrating this wonderful thing. It can't just be an afterthought. This entire religious context of why this thing exists and what it means can't be an afterthought.
I was thinking too, you know, when I was talking about it, and this is a 2-part question, but you know, my position was, you know, no one should ever tell someone else what to wear. At the same time, as long as it's used as a tool by Islamic theocracies, etc., for control and dehumanization, let's not put it on freaking Cosmo, right? Let's not say we're going to tell you what to wear, but until this is not a tool of oppression and dehumanization, let's not prop it up as a celebrated symbol. I thought that was basic. Right. And I was surrounded by many of my fellow liberals who thought I was trying to tell someone else what to wear, or that I should disqualify myself from a human rights discussion because I'm the wrong color, because I'm from the West, because I'm male, etc. All of these disqualifiers in place. I don't know. You want to speak to any of that? You know, the celebration of the hijab?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that you said that I think we could just go on about for a long time. But I mean, I can't imagine that we would treat, you know, the dress code of the fundamentalist Mormon women. You know, they're wearing these long dresses and they're covering up their head a little bit, and they have these like old-fashioned hairstyles. I don't think we would celebrate that in the same way that we celebrate the hijab. We would understand there that there's a context, and that even if a grown adult woman, you know, chooses whatever that means again to put it on, that there is an entire community in which she has been brought up, and there's a set of values and norms that she has adopted, partially because she was raised to be that way, and she doesn't really know any other way. And we understand that as a context. And even if, let's say, somebody converts to fundamentalist Mormonism or whatever and decides to put it on, we still would feel uncomfortable with that kind of extreme dress on the cover of Cosmo. We would still feel like there's something that's not quite right here, and maybe there's something here that we should just be careful, and then we should find ways to celebrate the choice of minorities and the religious freedom of minorities without glorifying certain aspects of it. And I don't think they think that that's what they're doing, and this is where the carelessness comes in. That's honestly more offensive to me than anything else. That they're just sort of slapping it on and not really giving it too much thought.
I always say they wear it like you might wear an awareness ribbon. You know, you put it on your lapel. It's
right.
You know, but
yeah, it's like try a hijab day, right? Like you just put it on and you're like, oh, how interesting, and different culture. I feel so educated. And that's so. I don't know. I just don't know how to react to that. I mean, you have to be so ignorant, and you have to just set aside the suffering of hundreds of millions of women in order to and the forced modesty that they have to undergo their whole lives in order to feel like this is just this fun, fashionable, ethnic, cultural, like ambiguous thing that we just put on and we celebrate, and then we feel good about ourselves because we're so accepting.
Let me take a real short break. When I come back, I want to talk about a very sensitive subject. We're going to talk about these purity tests that get put in place when we start talking about human rights issues. There seems to be a list of pre-qualifications that you have to be able to advocate for other human beings on this planet. We're going to talk about extremism, and we're going to go to the switchboard and see what our listeners have to say. After this, hang on. I mentioned earlier that I was going to Denver July 27th for the Colorado Secular Conference and the other dates coming up. I will have my Harry's razor with me, the whole kit, actually, the whole Harry's shaving kit, because I love the way that the blades feel and work. I don't need disposable razors for travel because, Harry's premium blades are $2 a piece. And they're manufactured at a world-class blade factory in Germany, and they're totally gimmick-free. Harry's was founded by a couple of guys who were tired of being ripped off and paying for the overpriced gimmicks like the vibrating heads and the heated blades. These are marketing gimmicks. They wanted a tool for shaving, and so they founded Harry's. They cut out these middleman markups, and they have seen 10 million people experience the Harry's difference and enjoy a 100% quality guarantee. You don't love your shave, you get a full refund. This summer, refresh your wallet and your face with a Harry's trial set. It comes with a weighted ergonomic handle for an easy grip, 5-blade razor with a lubricating strip and trimmer blade for a close shave, rich lathering shave gel that'll leave you smelling great, and a travel blade cover to keep your razor dry and easy on the go. Listeners of my show can redeem their trial set at harrys.com/thethinkingatheist. Make sure you go to harrys.com/thethinkingatheist to redeem your offer and let them know I sent you to help support the show. My patrons get this show commercial free. They also get it 2 days early. Thank you so much for your support at patreon.com/Seth Andrews. I continue a conversation with Sarah Haider. She's a friend. She's co-founder of Ex-Muslims of North America. She is a human rights activist. And we're talking just candidly sort of about some of the challenges and opportunities we face as activists inside and outside of atheist circles. I'm interested in these purity tests where people can't advocate for someone else unless they are X or unless they aren't Y. I'm reminded of the story of Rahaf Muhammad when she was trying to escape the Bangkok airport. She's barricaded in the room. She's on Twitter. She's live streaming. Please, they're coming for me. They've threatened to kill me. And I remember, when I was out there with so many other people, we're all sharing this story, and the story goes viral. And she is rescued and given asylum in Australia, or in Canada, rather. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking to myself, if she ever stumbled across the share by myself, an ex-Christian, not an ex-Muslim, born in Oklahoma in the United States, and she saw me advocating for her, I can't imagine she would be like, shit, he's white, or he's male, or he's not an ex-Muslim. And yet I am told constantly that I have to be X or not be Y to be able to support someone else. This makes no sense. Like, I can't march with my best friend in a pride parade because I'm hetero. Where do these things come from? And I'm sure you've experienced them as well, right?
Right. And they've gotten worse, right? I remember a couple of years ago when I first started hearing this kind of language, and I was and I started saying, I don't know about this. I don't know if this makes sense, that you have to be the exact race, ethnicity, whatever, in order to discuss certain issues. And I remember when I first brought it up, people said, these are just extremists. These are just wacky Tumblr teenagers, and you need to forget about them and move on to the real problems and discuss the real problems. Except this kind of thinking has taken over. I wouldn't say, maybe taking over is a strong word, but truly become normalized in our discourse, especially in activist circles and progressive activist circles, especially, that you have to come from a certain set, you have to you have to come from a certain experience and able to, in order to even participate in the discussion, right? There's certain things that you're not even allowed to have an opinion on. I'm not even allowed to have an opinion on.
Like I can't advocate for issues relating to gender equality because right. I'm a man. I thought that was the point. I thought we are all supposed to be advocating for each other to erase those inequalities. I'm endlessly frustrated by this issue and by the way that we use our
the factors that we can't change about ourselves as a form of, qualifier for whether or not you're allowed to participate in a certain discussion. It's very lazy. In a very fundamental level, it's anti-liberal. It's the opposite of the fundamental idea that makes up liberal society, and which is that we have the capacity to speak to each other, and we have the capacity to change each other's minds, to make coalitions, to work together for a better future. But the only way you can have that is if you understand that there's a common humanity, and there's an ability to empathize, and an ability to sympathize, and an ability to understand deeply, sometimes, best of all, situations that you're not necessarily a part of. And again, if you let this concept go, then what are we left with? If you can't participate in certain conversations, I can't participate in certain conversations unless I belong to that specific ethnic group, then we're just all cloistered in our little bubbles of people who have the same skin color and gender and whatever, what have you, and we're not allowed to, participate in dialogue together and work together as a coalition. And it's just really destructive.
Beat the dead horse here. Have you gotten involved in the milkshaking discussions at all? No. You haven't. No, and I haven't really thought about it very much. I don't. Yeah. Wow.
I heard about it. Yeah.
It's much of the same kind of stuff, where you go out and you throw, apparently we throw, custard at awful people, and this is supposed to solve something. And so I just think this is not helpful.
It's not. It's an exercise in feeling good about yourself. That's what it is. It's the angry people who are, okay, they're rightfully angry and upset, right? A lot of people are upset at what's happening in the world around us. They're scared. And they want to do something, and they feel like the normal processes are slow and they're frustrating, or maybe they no longer believe that they work. So they just want to do something. But so often what we end up doing is just an exercise in inventing our own feelings. And much of the time it actually has it actually harms whatever cause that we're trying to fight for.
You feel like that, like Antifa, et cetera, I mean, they are what they say they despise. This sort of mob rule, this burn it all down sort of moral, or not moral, but, perhaps moral, but just sort of an anarchy. I just resist extremism. And somehow this is a controversial point of view in almost the year 2020. I just don't think extremism is how we solve today's problems. And in the Twitterverse, I don't see anybody de-escalate, or very few people de-escalating these days. So
I think it comes from especially a place of ignorance. A lot of people you see Antifa and the far right, and I'm not equivocating. I know that they're different, and I personally think that the far right is a far, far, far greater threat. And I understand that. I mean, they've actually killed people. It's different. But that's not to say that we shouldn't be worried about the extremists on the far left. And I do think, if you look at the makeup of a lot of these people, they're young. They're white men, right? Especially Antifa, it's white men. That's what it is. But there are people who have never seen the decay of civil discourse. They've never been in a society where violence is the rule. It's not the exception. You don't make your point through violence. You run from violence because it is everywhere, and it is impossible to hide from and keep yourself safe from. And they don't understand that if you allow our civil discourse to decay to the point that violence in any form becomes normalized, then inevitably the people that will be at the top of that hierarchy will not be the people who are most interesting, most convincing, most talented. It will be the people who are best at utilizing violence to their advantage. It's going to be the thugs and the most brutal, cruel people in our society that are going to take advantage of such a situation.
I just don't think we're going to hate ourselves into a better future. I'd call me naive. We're on the clock here with Sarah. She's got a few minutes left. I've got a call on the switchboard. Let's make it fast. 316, you're on with the Thinking Atheist podcast. Seth Andrews, Sarah Haider. Who's this?
Hey, this is David from Holland.
David, thanks for calling. Do you have a question or comment for Sarah?
Yeah. Hi, Sarah. Good evening. It's evening here in Holland. As an ex-Muslim, wouldn't you say, as repugnant as it may seem, that extremists or fundamentalists are the true Muslims, since they take the text literally from the Quran and live by it? In a way, there can't be a moderate Islam, can there? That was my question.
Okay. And can there be a moderate Islam, is what you're saying.
I think,
Sure.
Is this question, the extremists are actually holding to the literal text of the Quran and are acting the true Islam sort of thing. Was that your question?
Yeah. I'm a former Catholic, and from what I know, that Christianity doesn't have fundamentalists on the same scale as Muslims have.
Right.
You know?
Mm-hmm. So both these things are true in that, one, there is a difference between Christianity and Islam and Christianity and Judaism, and that matters. Those differences matter, and they're often, the differences are deep. They're based in the scripture, and that has effects, echoes throughout Muslim practice. And the history of Islam is different in that, and it looks very different than Christianity. Christianity was weak in its beginning. Islam had a lot of successes right at the beginning, and Muhammad was a politician and a statesman, as well as a religious leader. And so that impacts the way Islam, thinks of itself, and the place that it has in society, and the fact that it had in history so many great successes, until they finally they slowed down after a long time, and a lot of great conquests. So that history also impacts the way that Muslim theologians and Muslim, if you go back to legal interpretations of Muslim law of the Sharia, you'll see that reflected in it. And so there's differences, and we shouldn't be naive and discount them. And I hear a lot of our religions are the same. They're equally bad or they're equally good. Well, that's not true. They're different. They're different, and in some ways Islam might be better, but in some ways it's going to be it's going to pose greater challenges, or at least temporarily more difficult challenges. So that is true, and I get frustrated that when people refuse to grapple with this reality. Having said that, can Islam be moderated? I think so, of course, because Muslims are humans just like everyone else. They're living in this modern world. They have the same pressures of the modern world that everyone else is going through. They have the same desires as everyone else, and they're going to be impacted by the growing understanding we have of the world, just like anyone else. So as long as they become more aware. And I think that religions in general have an endless capacity to fool themselves, right? And religious people, I think to some degree, you kind of have to play a dance, and when you are a religious person, and ignore a good deal of what's going on. So I think Muslims can confuse themselves and become a little bit more moderate. And I think to some degree we've seen that happen in Christianity when some Christians advocate for gay rights, and they're more accepting than they have been ever before. These are historically not Christian things, but they've become Christian things. And I think a similar thing can happen to Islam. But I'm betting on the rise of atheism to do a lot of that moderating work as well.
Appreciate your call very much, sir. Thanks so much.
Yep. Bye.
All right. Take care. I would spend longer on the call, but we're pushing the clock. I know you have to jet here in about 2 minutes. Give me some good news, Sarah. I mean, talk about the work you're doing with ex-Muslims of North America or elsewhere. We can talk about this recent event. You had this big ex-Muslim event, whatever. Just let us know what's happening, and then how we can help support you in your work, okay?
Yeah, so lots of good things are in the works with Ex-Muslims of North America. Please follow our website or our social media, and we'll try and keep everyone up to date. This next coming year, we want to be more public and more open, and so we're excited to do that. And we have a lot of initiatives coming up to have more videos, more open conferences and events, so that other people can join. I'm working on an event that's separate from this work, but it is very related. It is a conference, a one-day conference in New York that's coming up. It's called When Rights and Religions Collide. We have a website, and you can look us up. And it's going to be a discussion and an in-depth look into all the different ways that secluded religious and isolated religious communities can harm or take away from the rights of their members, and particularly their most vulnerable members. So that's what we're going to be thinking about in the conference, and that's what the speakers are going to talk about. This
that's
collision.
Not limited to Islam. Is it just a general, broad topic?
Yeah, it's a broader conference, and my co-organizers, I'm organizing it together with these two amazing women, and we've been working on it for a couple of months. One of them is the founder of this Amish Heritage Foundation, which is the I think first organization maybe of people who are leaving the Amish lifestyle behind. So she works with that group, and the other woman that is working with me, it works with. I think she was a founder of an organization called Footsteps, and they assist Hasidic or Orthodox Jews who are leaving their faith community behind. So the three of us came together. We found that our communities have similar issues, and we also found that the broader world struggles to understand what exactly is happening, and especially when it comes to the infringement of individual rights and liberties within these secluded and isolated communities. So we wanted to have a conference where we can just discuss this at large, and take into all the different things that come into play to make that happen. From a sociological perspective, but also legally, what we can do to assist academics who are thinking about these issues, but also service providers who might be interacting with groups of people that come from this background.
I love the stories of ex-religious people.
Yeah.
I just love them. And I'm curious to see if, they were indeed reasoned. Often extremist religious people reasoned out of their faith. I know a great many of us were. So go meet your obligations. I know you've been very generous with your time. I'd love a chance to sit down and do this when we aren't really on the clock, because you're such a good guest. But I will make sure to point everybody to your site. I got your Twitter handle. We'll get Ex-Muslims website in the description box, and we'll see you out there. Thanks for all of your amazing work.
Thank you for having me on, Seth.
You bet.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter for a complete archive of podcasts and videos, products like mugs and t-shirts featuring the Thinking Atheist logo, links to atheist pages and resources, and details on upcoming free thought events and conventions. Log on to our website, thethinkingatheist.com.